The marker squeaked and then dropped with a dull click. Inside the glass-walled boardroom at Skylink Aerospace headquarters in Accra, a rough drawing of a jet lay buried under a mess of failed numbers. Arrows crossed each other, equations contradicted themselves, and despair filled the air. At the head of the long table, billionaire CEO Kwami Mensah gripped the edge, his voice trembling. "We have 48 hours, he said, his eyes moist. "If we fail again, we lose everything. Contracts, reputation, lives." His team of top engineers sat frozen, too scared to speak. Silence thickened until a calm voice, out of place, floated in from the doorway. "I can correct it." Every head turned toward the sound. A woman stood there, her hair unkempt, her clothes worn, a tattered satchel clutched to her chest. She looked more like a beggar than someone who belonged in that room. The guards by the door moved immediately. "Wait," Kwami said, raising a hand. His tired eyes studied her. She wasn't afraid. Her gaze was fixed on the whiteboard as if it were an old friend that had lost its way. "I said," she repeated, "I can correct it." Just hours earlier, under the Jamestown Bridge, Amma woke up to the sound of trotro horns and hawkers shouting pure water. She sat up on her flattened cardboard, hugged her satchel tightly, and looked at the rising sun in Accra. Inside that bag were her treasures, a weather-beaten engineering book, old certificates, and a pen running low on ink. She washed her face at the public tap, stared at her reflection in the rippling water, and whispered to herself, "Today will be different." Amma walked through the busy streets of OSU, her eyes lingering on the tall glass building of Skylink Aerospace. She had walked past it countless times, feeling both pain and hope, like a hungry person walking past a bakery. But this morning, something pulled her forward. She noticed the hurried faces of employees, the anxiety in their voices, and the rush of people inside. She didn't sneak in, she simply walked small and unnoticed. At the top floor, she stopped when she saw the boardroom through the glass. The whiteboard, the wrong parts, the hopeless CEO, all of it struck something deep within her. 48 hours. She understood countdowns. She understood broken systems. That's when she stepped forward and said, "I can correct it." The room filled with whispers. "Who is she?" someone asked quietly. "This is crazy," another said. But Kwami Mensah, feeling he had nothing to lose, pushed the marker across the table. "If you waste my time," he said in a low voice, "you waste my company." Amma stepped forward. She carried the scent of dust, sun, and familiar streets. Without saying a word, she took the marker. For 3 seconds, she stayed still, and then she acted. She wiped away 2 violent arrows that crossed the wind. She drew one clean line, smooth like a river. She circled the small box labeled "Away" and wrote, "Sensor drift under vibration." Her hand moved quickly but confidently. 3 equations appeared. She sketched a filter like a sieve. "When the plane shakes, this sensor panics," she explained plainly. "It thinks the nose is too high. The autopilot pushes it down. The pilots struggle. Chaos starts. But we can teach it to wait. To listen to 2 helpers, airspeed and vertical speed. If they agree, it acts. If one shouts alone, it waits." Her final words landed soft but strong, "The machine must not be proud. It must learn soft hands." The engineers froze, their doubt fading into admiration. "Run a sim," Kwami ordered. Fingers flew over keyboards, and laptops lit up. Soon, a digital sky appeared on the projector. The mother plane rode down the runway, lifted, and encountered turbulence. The old system would have panicked here, sending the nose into a dangerous dive. But Amma whispered, "Soft hands." The new filter steadied the shakes. The helpers double-checked everything. The system ticked evenly. The override gave the pilot a stronger voice early on. The nose dipped, but only a little. The numbers, once messy, began to flow smoothly, curving like gentle waves. Then, suddenly, the projector went black. Gasps filled the room. For too long, heartbeats, hope hung in silence. The lights came back on. The result box flashed green. Success. The room erupted in disbelief and joy. Engineers jumped to their feet, applauding. But the applause wasn't for Kwami. It was for Amma, the one woman from the streets who had fixed what they could not. Kwami led Amma to his office. She sat awkwardly in the comfortable chair, holding her satchel on her lap. "Who are you?" Kwami asked, his eyes wide with curiosity. Amma hesitated, then opened her satchel. She pulled out her one engineering book. "This is who I used to be," she said, her voice trembling. Years ago, she had been Dr. Amma Sewa, one of Ghana's top aeronautical engineers. She had worked in Europe, designing flight systems, and was loved by her husband and their daughter. But betrayal shattered her life. Her husband accused her of cheating. DNA results, which were later proven to be forged, claimed her daughter wasn't hers. The next morning, the police arrested her. Drugs had been planted in her bag. She ended up jailed, disgraced, and deported. When she returned to Accra, she had nothing. Her husband had vanished with their daughter. Only her book and certificates reminded her of who she once was. Amma's voice cracked. "I lost everything. But my mind remained." Kwami felt a tightness in his throat. "Genius can be buried," he whispered, "but it never dies." Kwami acted quickly. He had Amma cleaned up, dressed nicely, and reintroduced her to the company, not as a beggar, but as their new lead engineer. Some people applauded. Others looked on with silent envy. One man, Kojo Agumen, the former lead engineer, forced a smile while anger simmered inside him. He had been Skylink standout. Now, a homeless woman had taken his place. Weeks went by, and Amma kept proving herself. She simplified problems that her peers couldn't solve, taught patiently, and inspired younger engineers. Aviation contracts came back, praising Kwami's team. But everyone knew the real hero was Amma. Kojo's resentment grew stronger. At press conferences, when Kwami called Amma the woman who saved Ghana's skies, Kojo clenched his jaw. Every compliment toward her felt like a blow to his pride. In secret, he started to plot. Amid the storms of work, Amma found something unexpected: love. She met Adwa, a kind-hearted financial officer at the company. Their bond grew quietly. Tea was brought late at night. They took walks along Lebodi Beach and shared laughter that softened Amma's scars. For the first time in years, Amma felt alive again. She was seen not as a broken woman but as someone deserving of joy. 5 months later, under the glow of Accra's streetlights, Adwa held a ring with trembling fingers. "Amma, will you marry me?" With tears in her eyes, Amma whispered, "Yes." It marked a new beginning. But Kojo, watching from the shadows, vowed it would never last. The night before Amma's wedding, her mansion, Kwami's gift, was quiet. She sat flipping through her old engineering book, reflecting on her journey from bridge to boardroom. Then came the knock. 3 men in dark jackets burst in. A gun fired. Pain seared through Amma's arm. She collapsed as blood stained the floor. Alarms blared, guards shouted, and the attackers fled into the night. Amma's last thought before losing consciousness: not again. I cannot lose it all again. At Korabu Teaching Hospital, Amma fought for her life. For 3 days, she lay unconscious. Adwa never left her side. On the 3rd night, Amma stirred and whispered Adwa's name. Relief filled the room. Kwami started an investigation. CCTV showed the truth: Kojo had been seen with the thugs before the attack. When captured, their leader confessed Kojo had paid for Amma's death. Arrested in his home, Kojo spat out words of anger. She stole my place. She doesn't belong here. The trial was quick. Evidence piled up, witnesses testified, and Kojo received a sentence of 20 years in prison. As they dragged him away, he hissed at Amma, "This isn't over. I will tell you." Amma's calm response echoed in the courtroom: "You have already destroyed yourself." Months later, Amma stood tall again, her wound healed and her spirit unbroken. Skylink thrived under her guidance. On her wedding day, the church in OSU overflowed with engineers, leaders, and even government officials. When Amma and Adwa exchanged vows, applause filled the hall. For Amma, it was more than a wedding, it was redemption. She was no longer the forgotten woman under the bridge. She was restored, respected, loved, and victorious. Years later, she and Adwa welcomed a daughter. Holding the baby close, Amma whispered, "You will never know the life I lived. You will only know love." But even as peace surrounded her, Amma remembered Kojo's final words in court. "Shadows always wait." Yet she smiled softly at her child. "I can correct it," she whispered again, "not just about planes, but about life itself." What do you think about this story? Where are you watching from? If you like this story, please comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.